Hello, welcome to my channel. This time I want to talk about the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder supposed colorism episode. The reason that I want to talk about it is because lately, colorism, racism, all of that, pretty privilege has been really big on my mind. Preferences, stuff like that. And at the time that I originally watched that episode, I really wasn't focused in on that. Like, colorism, it was something that I knew existed, obviously. Racism, I knew it existed, but I wasn't thinking about it in the same way or nearly to the same extent that I am thinking about it now. So, when I watched the episode, right, initially, I remembered like the way I looked at it, I felt like the guy Noah who liked Zoe. I felt at the time that it wasn't really a problem in the sense that I felt like, well, everybody can have their preferences, not everybody has to like those preferences, but you're attracted to what you're attracted to. It is what it is. And I did think that it was weird. I don't know. I thought the whole episode was weird. Like them being mad at Zoe, and I don't know. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. When I think on the episode now, I still think the episode's weird. And it still rubs me the wrong way. Uh and it rubs me the wrong way for similar reasons. Like in the sense of I still don't think that Zoe should have been the target for their anger. Like it should not have been on her. And the reason I feel like that is because I mean my reasoning is a little different from when I first watched it cuz like I said back then when I first watched it I wasn't really into the colorism thing. So back then, well actually no, I guess it's really this pretty much the same. Zoe didn't, I mean, he liked her, but that was it. I mean, I can't even remember if she actually went out with him, but even if she did, it was really just a thing of, oh, there's a cute guy who likes me. That's really cool. That was as far as it went for Zoe. She didn't pick him based off of any preferences. She didn't even pick him. It was just she was, flattered by who liked her. That's all that was. So for the rest of her so-called friends, and I'm not even going to get into, the treatment of Zoe and just my issues with I don't know, maybe I'll just kind of talk about my issues with the Proud family a little bit just because it does tie into this whole colorism racism thing that I'm on really tough lately. But no, I mean she didn't, again, like she didn't pick him. He picked her. She just, liked who she liked. Her so-called friends get mad at her and it felt really weird. Like that whole thing felt really weird to me. But what I want to talk about is the quote unquote colorism and just, this episode as a whole and the way that I've seen it commentated on YouTube versus my own commentary. So, okay, first off, I know that this is considered the colorism episode, but I don't think that's accurate, first of all. And even when I first watched it, I felt like, that wasn't really what it was. If anything, rather than colorism, I would say that this episode is just more racism than anything, right? Because colorism would have been, and I do think there was one commentary video that I watched that said this, but colorism would have been if he would have came in and picked like Penny, La Cienega, or some other girl who looks like them. You know, if he would have came in, picked a, woman of color of lighter skin, that would have been the colorism. And, if any darker skinned girl would have came up to him, he would have turned her down. That would have been colorism. That's not even what happened though. He literally went for a white girl. She wasn't even a person of color. Once, you start going into, that territory, that's a race thing now. That's not really a color thing. Like, even if you want to argue it, oh, well, she has white skin. Okay, but like, again, what I just said, right? So I feel like it being called a colorism episode is really weird. Also, I feel like it didn't actually tackle the issue of what Noah did. And I feel like, honestly, because they did such, and I mean such, a poor job of tackling what he did, I think that's why, like that's a big part of the reason why the first time I watched this video, I didn't see as much of an issue with it. Or really, I didn't see an issue with what he did at all. Because, like I said, I felt like, everyone has preferences. Sometimes they're not uh, common or ideal or whatever, but everyone has them. It is what it is, you know? And I still feel that way, but considering the issue that I can see that they were trying to tackle in the episode, that's not how this should have been framed. And honestly, that's not even how they framed it. See, to me, the worst part about this episode is the fact that they really didn't commit to anything. To me, it feels like the only thing they committed to was trying to once again make Zoe into essentially like the punching bag of the group. That's the only thing that they committed to and doubled down on, and it didn't even make sense. Because they could have more so been like, hey, people have preferences. They could have leaned into that. And I feel like when Sugar Mama had her talk with Penny, that's kind of what they were going for. But again, that should have been like, if that's the angle that they wanted to take with it, then they should have made that pretty much the focus of the episode. And they should have really been trying to hammer that point in. But they didn't. Right? So they didn't lean into the preferences are okay thing. But then really, it seemed like they wanted to go into the him only liking white girls is a problem thing, which, okay, cool. I'm all for that, right? Like, again, that is something that I have been thinking about a lot lately. It's what I've been wanting to talk about, just like racial colorism issues and stuff like that lately. So, I think that a take like that would have been really powerful, but it's not the way they went with it. See, because when it comes to that sort of issue, the issue of colorism, racism, choosing women with the lightest skin, when it comes to that issue, that is, or at the very least, specifically in this case, that was Noah's issue. It wasn't Zoe's issue. It was Noah's issue. Because this wasn't a case where Zoe is trying to get her a black guy for whatever reason. No, this is a light skinned black guy, at least that's how it's framed, going for a, a white girl. Even though there's, all these other girls around, whatever. Again, that's a him problem. And I feel like that is very, very reflective in especially the black community as a whole. I can't tell you how many times I see dark skinned black men with a light skinned black woman. I've talked about it, you know, I've talked about it on my channel before, but I see it all the time to the point where, and I watched another video, another commentary video that I really liked that made me really also, I think, want to do a video talking about the children that are produced from that type of dynamic, or just the dynamic of having a black person who purposely dates outside of well, specifically a man, right? A black man who purposely dates outside of his race. Now, I say purposely because, again, it's one thing if, or not even necessarily outside of his race, but goes in focused on going for a lighter complected woman, right? Because, like, we don't, I've talked about that before, but I've never really talked about the issue of the children. So I may do a video on that. We'll see. But the point is, it is so common for that sort of thing to happen. And even if we look at the Proud family in general, we have it with Penny, her parents. Dark skinned black man gets the light skinned black woman, right? And Penny is a product of that. But we see it, right? It's always a light skinned woman. If they really want to talk about colorism, they could have talked about that right there. That's easy. That's low hanging fruit right there. Honestly, in this whole new era of mine with the colorism and the racism, I kind of want to just pick that entire show apart, because I have so many issues with that show, and not just that show, but other shows that I've been thinking about lately that at the time I really didn't have an issue with, and now I do. But let me focus back in on the issue. Like I said, going for lighter complected women, whether it's of the same race or a different race, specifically within the black community, with men specifically, is definitely a problem. Like, it's a problem. It really is. And this was a great opportunity to show how it's a problem, why it's a problem, right? Because if he only dates white girls, why is that? Right? Like, the episode should have been focused on him, why he is thinking and feeling the way that he does. But it's not, which doesn't make any sense, because why would you not concentrate on the person who's actually doing the act? And as far as, if you say, well, instead, since he's not a main character, we'll concentrate on the people affected by the act. They didn't even do that well, to be honest, because let me tell you something. Now, I have said, and maybe this is controversial, but I still feel like it is what it is. When it comes to lightness of the skin, whiteness of the skin, whatever you want to call it, I feel like a lot of times that's all that matters. That is what is praised, what is the trophy. So it's not even about whether or not you're actually attractive, whether or not your features actually work for you. It's more so about how light are you. That's it. How light are you? You might not even be that conventionally attractive, but that whiteness is gonna bump you up so much in so many people's eyes. And also, you being less attractive but still being white, it like almost gives you a pass in society to be less attractive. Like, you can get away with it better. It essentially just means that if you are, light, white, whatever, and attractive, you just have additional bonuses, benefits, privileges. But that whiteness will always afford you more privilege than someone who's darker. And if they wanted to go that angle with Zoe, right? Because here's my thing, and this is something that I picked up on the first time I watched it and I thought was weird, and I still think it's weird and doesn't make any sense. So if Noah just picks girls just because they're white, right? Only because they're white. When he first walked in, I remember that there was this other white girl, and she was conventionally more attractive than Zoe. He saw her first. If it was only whiteness that he cared about, why did he not pick that girl? He saw her first, and she was white, and she was at least like average looking. Now, Zoe, we all know that she's purposely made to be this like awkward, frumpy, nerdy, just like very skinny girl, who's not supposed to be seen as attractive. We know this. So it doesn't really make sense for him to go for her when he already passed by a more conventionally attractive white girl. So to me, that would have been an opportunity to, again, we could have done something else with that, right? Zoe could have said, hey, there were other white girls around, but he picked me. So he actually liked and was attracted to me, which I feel like is a sound argument, because, again, why pass up that other girl and go for Zoe, who is, again, she was created to be the more unconventionally attractive girl. It wasn't like she was the only white girl in the room, therefore by default he needed to pick her, and it didn't matter how unattractive she was, because, again, that's an angle they could have taken, but they chose not to. They chose, they could have even not put the first white girl in, right? Could have had him just, he walks in the room, Zoe is literally directly in front of him, the only white girl he sees, so he just zones in on her. They could have did that, but they didn't. So it did seem like there was an element of, there was something specifically about her that he liked. But again, and they could have even made the episode about that, about why it didn't even have to be a colorism or racial issue episode at all. It could have just been, why can't Zoe be seen as attractive, at the very least by someone who is considered conventionally attractive? They could have just made that the episode for real, and it didn't have to be anything else. But again, it was like they didn't want to just focus in on one area, and it was like they left these, I don't know if you want to call them plot holes or what you want to call them, but I just named 3 different directions that they could have gone and focused in on to make whatever message that they wanted to tell more powerful. But instead, it's like they went in on everything very like lukewarm, very lackadaisical, right? They didn't want to really concentrate on anything, and it made the overall message, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know what message they were trying to convey for real. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know. I genuinely don't know what they were trying to get across with that episode. Were they trying to get across that uh preferences are okay? He can like who he likes, because I think uh uh the guys that Penny and Dejanay are messing with. Listen. I know everybody says that those two guys are their boyfriends, but when I watched the show, at no point did I see where they were like ever official with these guys. I just want to point that out. I just want to say it because I haven't heard anybody else say it. Maybe it's just easier to call them their boyfriends, but as far as I saw, they're just talking to these guys. It's nothing official. They're still in a talking stage. If anything, it's more of a situationship thing going on. They not committed yet, in my opinion. But I digress. Regardless, those two guys were like, hey, he can like who he likes. They said that, from what I recall, at the lunch table, and like I said, the talk Sugar Mama had, she kind of essentially said that, but also was sort of trying to say, you know, hey, if he doesn't see the beauty in you, then, again, honestly, I felt like the Sugar Mama part was good, and I feel like that should have been the tone of the entire episode. But again, it's like they didn't want to commit to it, and I'm not sure why. I really don't understand, again, what it is that they were going for, what it is that they were trying to do. I don't understand. So I feel like this video is already kind of longer than I wanted it to be. And I haven't gone into the issues that I have with him picking Zoe. But, since I feel like essentially his reasonings for picking Zoe are things that I've already talked about, all I'm going to say about it is this. I feel like, you know, him deciding that he only dates white girls. My question is why? Why does he only date white girls? Is it because he legit just likes their features and that's all he's really attracted to? So is it a looks based physical thing? Or is it a mentality thing where he feels like they're more educated, they, I don't know, have better diction or whatever? I don't know. Is it a classism thing where he feels like they have more money, they're more dignified? So my thing would just be, why is it that that is what he wants? Or is it, I mean, because again, it's not like we know a ton about him, right? Is it that he's a light skinned black guy? Is it that he's mixed? Is he neither, even, right? And so is his choice reflective of some sort of like self hate, or the way that he's seen one of his parents treated, either within his household or in the environment? Like, what is the root issue for why he only dates white girls? Again, that's why I personally feel like the episode should have been focused on him. We should have, had the show showing him as the main character for most of it. We see him going home, see him talking to all different types of people, maybe hearing if he got friends, hearing their commentary. If he don't have friends, again, maybe that's something else that's contributing to this. We should have gotten to see why his mentality was the way that it was. Again, though, that's if that was the direction that they wanted to take the episode. But if we wanted to just talk about it's okay to have preferences regardless of the reasons, which, when I first watched the show, I felt like more or less that was fine. Although now I feel like, no, the reasons why you have preferences do matter. Like, you could have a preference, but why? I do, or not even necessarily that, but it's less of, see, I feel like there's a difference between having a preference and being versus being, um, see, the word isn't really exclusive. Which I think is so interesting, right? Because you're not being inclusive, you're being, I don't know, I can't think of a word, but it's not exclusive. But you're just, you're basically unqualifying an entire group of people, and they're your people. So it's like, it would be, even though one could make an argument for this too, to completely, just say, like, oh, I don't want to deal with an entire group of people, race of people, whatever, that could have its issues. But I feel like if you're black, even if you do have this preference for white people, a preference is, well, I could date a black girl as a black guy, but I prefer white women versus I don't date black girls. I only date white women. Like, that's the difference. When you still would be willing to deal with, your race, but you just tend not to, that's the preference. But you saying, no, I just don't go for this race, that's not a preference anymore. I can't think of what it is other than just like, it's just a choice. It's not a preference, it's a choice. It's, you know, but yeah, again, they could have leaned into that preference thing a lot harder. They could have leaned into why specifically did he like Zoe? Was it, he got a thing for freckles, he got a thing for redheads, he got a thing for girls with glasses. So yeah, she white, but also, or does he like tall girls? Is it I didn't even think about this, but is it the fact that she's white and she's tall and skinny? Like, even though the argument could be made that she's dangerously skinny, it could play into, well, um, I mean, I'm not going to call it fat phobia, but just, oh, you need to be skinny. You need to be skinny. And she, even if she's dangerously skinny, fits into that, again, it goes into what I've said in another video as far as, you know, whether or not certain features look attractive on you, it's more of just having a checkbox. So even though altogether Zoe is made to be an unconventionally, or yeah, unconventionally, like not really attractive, she's still okay. She's white, she's tall, she's skinny, right? Even if you would look at her and be like, I don't know, she ticks all those boxes. So is that why he chose her? I didn't even think about that till just now. But is that it? Because that other girl, again, I don't think she was that tall. Zoe was definitely skinnier than her, So it could have even been that. And they could have played into that, Could have maybe even made him, have a statement like, oh, girl, like, you so tall and you nice and slim, whatever. He could have said something like that for why he picked her specifically, and that could have played into the issue as well. But instead, again, they did not want to commit. It's like they were scared. It was all over the place. It was a hot mess. I the villain was not Zoe. The villain, if there was a villain, was clearly the guy Noah. I don't know why they didn't frame it that way. It doesn't make any sense to me. And really, the video as a whole irritates me for that reason, because it was an opportunity to really dig in to any one of those topics that are all, I think, very prominent in the world, especially for black people, darker skinned people. I it's a conversation that I think could have been had. So, hey, that's pretty much what I want to talk about with that, because I just recently was listening to some commentary again on that episode, and so it just made me want to talk about it, because, I didn't have a channel when I first watched it, and also, like I said, only more recently have I really been getting into this topic of colorism and racism, so it just seemed more appropriate to talk about it now. So, thank you for listening. If you have anything that you want to contribute to the conversation, feel free to do so in the comment section. I just ask that you're respectful if you do. I'd love to hear what you think, because I do appreciate hearing different opinions and points of views. Maybe you'll say something that I didn't think about, or you'll agree with me, you'll disagree with me. I'd be curious to find out. But again, thank you for listening, and hope you have a good one.